Hey everybody, it's Carter Froelich. And our mission at Launch Development Finance Advisors is to be a hero to the land development and home building community. We do that through a lot of different ways, but one of the ways that I want to give back to the industry is to be able to share our experience as well as the experience of a myriad of different players in our industry, their experience, what they've learned, what they're doing, and just the knowledge that they have to provide to the industry. With that having been said, I hope you enjoy this episode. And if there's anything that we can do at launch to help you finance infrastructure, reduce costs, mitigate risk, all with the goal of enhancing project profitability and returns, please give us a call at the contact information in the show notes.
Welcome to the Land to Lots podcast, powered by Launch Development Finance Advisors. And now your host, Carter Froelich.
Hello, everybody. It's Carter Froelich, and welcome to another episode of Land to Lots. And today I'm really excited to welcome to the show Chris Meany. And for those of you who may not be familiar with Chris is a founding member of Wilson Meany. And he, among other projects in Southern California and Northern California, and specifically large-scale infill projects, he is one of the members responsible for the project we're going to be talking about here today, Treasure Island. So, Chris, welcome to the stage. It's great to have you here today to talk about, you and Treasure Island and the experiences you have gone through and are going through.
Carter, thank you very much, and I look forward to our conversation and really appreciate that you spend so much time focused on the important need for creating housing in California and the rest of the country.
Oh man, that's a loaded question just right there that we could spend probably a week talking about. But yeah, Chris, before we get started, maybe you could just tell our listeners a little bit about you, how I think you're a native Southern Californian you went to Georgetown and you got into the development business. But could you give us a little bit more color on how you got here?
Sure. When I first got out of school, which was a very, very long time ago, I went to work for a medical device company because I was quite interested in making something real.
Yeah.
I didn't want to be a financial engineer. I wanted to be somebody who actually created something real. And I spent 2 years right out of college doing that. And the company promptly failed to pass its FDA tests and shut down. And that was shocking for a young person to see that technology could fail. But my want to make real things survived. But I wanted to do something where I could better understand it. And we've needed homes and structures for thousands and thousands of years, and so I thought that's the real thing I want to build. And after a short stint of doing that in New York, returned to California, and I've been, I think, sort of 38 years or so doing development in California.
Yeah. And for those of our listeners, if you're not familiar with Wilson Meany, I really encourage you to go take a look at their website so that you can see all of the various projects that they've developed both in Southern California and Northern California, and some of the most iconic buildings, at least for me. And I'm not a Bay Area guy, but every time I go there, I have to go see the Ferry Building. I think it's the coolest place ever. And then also you did the Flood Building, which is also, a survivor of the 1906 earthquake and fire. I mean, these are iconic structures, and there's many more. But before we jump into Treasure Island, just tell me about the Ferry Building, how you got involved in that, because I think it's just fascinating.
Well, I actually am very proud of the Ferry Building, and it is one of the highlights of my career. I spent the early part of my work in San Francisco, particularly, but in California, really focused on doing historic renovations. And we were blessed to have done kind of 4 or 5 of the city's most important landmarks. And so we had that expertise. We were very focused on placemaking, on using retail to kind of anchor mixed use places. And so when the Port of San Francisco offered a long-term ground lease for the ferry building, we put together, primarily with a sister company, bigger than I am, a proposal to ground lease the building, and we're successful. And the idea, for anybody that hasn't seen it, there were really 2 driving ideas behind the ferry building. One is that this was San Francisco's great, if you will, equivalent of a transit hub, the center station of the city, because this is how people entered 100 years ago the city. They came across the Transcontinental Railroad and entered through the ferry building. And it had a great central nave that was one of the great interior spaces of San Francisco, but it had been lost to time. And we proposed to recreate that, which we've now done, and it really is a quite compelling physical place.
Mm-hmm.
And the second big idea we brought to it is that San Francisco has this incredible culture of food and food vendors, and we weren't trying to create an artificial version of that. We were trying to create a house and lure those existing entrepreneurs to the ferry building to do what they do best. And it's now some 20 plus years later, and they're still doing it.
Oh man, and I think we're going to find a link with the ferry building as part of our discussion here today. I think. So and you've been kind enough to, and when we first met, I was able to, you were able to take us through the Treasure Island, and it was just fabulous. And I said, Chris, we just have to talk about this adventure you've been on for a number of years, and you'll continue to be involved in. But maybe I'll have you get into the land use plan in a minute, but how were you originally introduced to the opportunity that presented itself as Treasure Island? I think an RFQ went out in 2000. Is that correct? Could you how did you become aware of it?
Well, and I just start out and say that I was not there at day one, though I was there a very short time later. In between 2000 and 2003, because the rights to develop the island were granted, a negotiating period was granted in 2003. During that time, the city of San Francisco was engaged in a process that was started under BRAC. I'm sure the audience knows the base realignment process of closing military bases and all the rules that go around that. So San Francisco was identified by the federal government as the intended local reuse authority for what was Naval Station Treasure Island, some 500 acres of land. And the city, recognizing that to go through the BRAC process requires you to demonstrate feasibility, to do a lot of very expensive technical work, wanted to approach the redevelopment of this former naval station as a public-private partnership. And early on, a number of companies, which included Lennar, are still very great and important partner in the joint venture. A consortium applied to be that private developer. They operate, at the time they applied under the name Treasure Island Community Development, and they were given a period of time to negotiate the terms. All the other partners have fallen away. Lennar is the partner that remains, though a couple of years later, in discussions between Lennar and the partners and the city of San Francisco, they jointly decided that adding an urban development partner, somebody that had experience in the city and was a little more experience with higher density development would be good to add to the team. And when we came then in 2005, 2006 to join the joint venture, we brought one of our longstanding partners, Stockbridge Capital Group, to join with us because we thought the more the merrier.
Yeah. Great. So when you came to the party and the negotiations are going on, now this is probably the for me anyway, this is my opinion, the most scenic and most beautiful master plan community in the United States. I mean, you can't get any better views anywhere from anything, at least in my opinion, from an urban environment. When the consortium Texas, or excuse me, Treasure Island Community Development LLC partners changing, how did you approach the land use plan? Because obviously, I'm sure the city, this is very important to their image, to their visions, to urban planning, to affordable housing. It's a formal naval base, probably has to be remediated. I mean, a ton of infrastructure. How does one begin to formulate a master plan related to 500 acres, which the last estimates I saw have 2.5 billion, and those are in 2023 dollars, but is authorized to issue $5 billion worth of debt. I mean, these are astronomical numbers. How does one begin to grapple with all of the issues on how do we make this dog hunt?
Well, Carter, first of all, I'm just going to agree with you. In the world, there are probably only 5 or 6 places that have as beautiful of an, if you will, bay harbor urban view. I mean, it's up there with Sydney Harbor and Hong Kong as really, we just do have a very unique site. So from the beginning really does go to this 2005, 2006 period, because when we entered to the joint venture with our partner Lennar and Stockbridge, and working closely with the city of San Francisco, it was with the understanding that we were going to start afresh with the building a master plan. So the city, and so that process, I would say, to answer your question, is really driven by 2 things. One is our listening to not only the people within San Francisco city government, but also the citizens of San Francisco, setting expectations about what they wanted, because California is a tough place to get entitlements.
Yeah.
And to think you're going to buck what people want is really silly. There's going to be enough things for us to negotiate.
Yeah.
That it's better to be making sure we're delivering something that the city wants. So one is to listen, and I'll talk a little bit about that. And the second is to put together a spectacular team, because when you are dealing with probably one of the country's best urban development sites. I mean, I agree. There are others that will compete, but I mean, it would be on the short list of best sites in America. You want to bring out the best thinking and the best expertise possible. So let me talk about those 2 bits a little bit. Yeah. From a listening standpoint, San Francisco is a very aspirational city. We pride ourselves in generating ideas and sort of in setting the pace for innovations in the country. And we do that at the very same time that we're very protective of our environment. And so there's a real tension there. So the city has a shortage of housing. We still do today. And it's, land use is a blood sport in San Francisco. So there is neighbors fight neighbors about getting that entitlement. And so here we had 1 mile from downtown, almost 500 acres of land in which there weren't any neighbors.
Yeah.
So San Francisco saw this as really a generational opportunity to create an important new residential district. And
Mm-hmm.
so, in fact, that's why they asked us to really kind of rethink the master plan. The from the city standpoint, the original thinking before we got there didn't have enough homes on it. They wanted more. So because there were no neighbors, because this was a big chunk of land, they wanted a big residential neighborhood. But it being San Francisco, they wanted it to be quite aspirational. They challenged us to make it the most environmentally sensitive development in America. It in fact is a LEED ND Platinum project,
Mm-hmm.
and also to make sure that we participated with the region in terms of creating a great open space resource to take advantage of our being in the middle of the bay. And finally, and again, being San Francisco, we're very, very sensitive to make sure that this is a community that has a broad range of affordability and housing types for a whole population. So it's not only on the environmental side that we're ambitious, but also on creating affordable housing and participation. Those were our mandates. To answer that, we put a team together that was led by SOM to be the master planner.
Mm-hmm.
We often like to get architects to work in teams because we find that in that dialogue, they can often push one another to do better thinking. So at the time, there was a local urban planning firm called SMWM. Those principals got eventually brought into Perkins and Will.
Yeah.
And so SOM, with their international perspective, and what was SMWM became Perkins and Will with their maybe more local planning sensitivities, were our lead urban planners. And then, of course, because parks and open space were so important, Conger and his crew at CMG were actively at the table as well.
Yeah. And so you're looking at the site, you're listening to the city, the residents, a lot of competing interest. We would like it to look like this, would like it to look like that. At some point, you're negotiating with the Treasure Island Development Authority. Is that who you ended up negotiating with? And who's running the numbers and working with the architects to say, ultimately, and we'll get into it, it's my understanding that your plan for 8,000 units total, of which 2,700 are to be affordable.
27%.
Or 27%. Okay, my fault. And 300 acres of open space of the 462 or the 500, whatever the accurate number is open space parks. And so it was with, and then also you have, I think 100,000 square feet of office, 381 or 311 of flex space, a hotel, 140,000 of retail. And so that ultimately allows you to generate the type of revenue to say, let's go with this. Is that kind of the math, or what was that first pro forma looking like? I guess is because these are big numbers. Yeah.
So you've accurately given the answer, but the answer only comes at the end, right?
Yeah, so exactly. That's what I wanted. How do we get there?
How do we get there? So first and foremost, going back to what was San Francisco's ambition here. San Francisco's ambition was to create a residential neighborhood. And so we began by just sizing the project with how many homes
Mhm.
would would be appropriate for
Yep.
this new master plan community. And the brackets for that were, on the one hand, we are 1 mile from downtown. We have a
Yeah.
ferry that crosses in 7 minutes, and yet we're also an island, right? And
Yeah.
so we want to make sure that we have enough homes to be a great thriving ecosystem. And
Yeah.
for us, we we look to what are the sizes of kind of small independent towns, and
Yeah.
we sort of put a floor of expectation that we wouldn't want to build a place that had less than 6,000 homes
Yeah.
as a minimum. And at the time when we were looking at traffic analyses, which have changed since
Yeah.
how we analyze those things, we thought that 10,000 might be an appropriate upper limit.
Mhm.
Our 8,000 homes was simply the midpoint between six.
It's funny how
Very,
that works. Yeah.
very sophisticated. Now,
Yeah.
I will tell you that as the world evolves and as we are
Yeah.
looking for more housing, and as the state of California is pushing densification, and as our approach to traffic analysis has changed, from my own personal view,
Yeah.
and I think many would see it today, um, we probably shouldn't have shied away from that upper limit.
Yeah.
This is a case of this is a great place for as much housing
Yeah.
as we
Yeah.
can get. Once we had the number of homes, you then have this question about how to lay it out, how to
Yeah.
create the physical place. And our guiding principles were that we wanted, as a as almost like a romantic ideal for
Yeah.
this island to be connected to downtown, to the ferry building. We wanted a direct, short ferry crossing to the
Yeah.
city. So we, on the west side of the island, literally 1 mile shore to shore to the ferry building, we created a ferry key.
Yeah.
It's about a 7 or 8 minute crossing by ferry boat. You see
Yeah.
you see the whole way. And we established that as the center of our master plan.
Yeah.
And then essentially we have two fingers of development that go one to the east and one to the north, each following the edge of the island.
Mhm.
And um, we did that because once we were establishing a limit of how many of a target of how many housing units we wanted, it wasn't let those housing units occupy all the land. It was,
Yeah.
what amount of the land do we want to occupy? And it happens that as we built out a master plan that approximated the neighborhoods of San Francisco, so a place that was built at
Ah.
the feeling of a North Beach, well,
Yeah.
we actually only needed half the land. So rather than wasteland,
Yeah.
we designed a master plan that used up only about half of the land, with the footprint of development having almost all the homes within a 10-minute walk of that ferry key that we
Yeah.
see as the center of development. And one more thing from the planning standpoint I'll note is we very much prioritize the pedestrian experience
Yeah.
over any other. So one of the things when we're out in the bay, and San Francisco has such a wonderful climate, but we can be a little breezy.
Mhm.
We decided that one of the ways of really ensuring long-term environmental sustainability was to actually be thoughtful from the very beginning about how we laid out our streets so that our buildings would respond more easily. So instead of having an orthogonal street grid in those
Mhm. Yeah.
fingers of development, we have a unique street grid in which our streets run in one direction, north and south, kind of following the contours of the island, following the orientation of the island. But to the east-west, our streets actually intersect with those north-south streets at a 68-degree angle, because that puts
Yeah.
them perpendicular to the prevailing wind direction and allows us to have trees that really knock down the wind, that increase the
Yeah.
solar exposure onto the sidewalks and really make the walking experience really, really pleasant.
Wow. That's incredible. The I just happened, and I don't know why, just before I got on here, I was looking at an old CFD application that we had put together in 1988. And it had one of the first EIRs, environmental impact reports, that we ever had to do in the state of California. And it was 13 pages long, Chris. Tell me about the EIR process that you had to go through, CEQA, and maybe I'm jumping ahead, but the reason I'm bringing it up, because I think about the ferry crossing. And if I was living on Treasure Island, I would never get in a car, period, end of story. I would be taking the ferry to the ferry building and then taking public transit or walking if I was in the financial district or anything else. What did the fact that you had the ability to just take a 7-minute ferry ride do to your traffic impact and your EIR? Maybe I'm geeking out a little, but it came up, and I just wanted to ask that question, and then we'll get into some more broader topics.
I'm gonna address the ferry and the other modes of transportation first, then I'll go back to your question on the EIR. So first, it is very important to us, that a new district of the city, that a place that is as big as a town in many parts of America, that this I think of it as a village, this neighborhood has many, many forms of transportation, including bikes and feet.
Yeah.
Right? So first I note that we have new on and off ramps from the Bay Bridge. So you can drive on and off the island easily. We have bus service to San Francisco with multiple bus lines. We have ferry service that we have put in place today and are operating it privately, but just to give the regional transit authority time to commission the 2 boats they're building right now, electric ferries, larger we run with it, will be servicing downtown on a much more regular schedule. So, and then again, from where you get off by public transportation or where you drive in your cars, you can walk or bike everywhere on the island. So first, for us, forms of transportation, they should be plentiful. There should be choices. And what we really like to say is people have different needs. Sometimes when people want to go to IKEA and get their furniture, they want to drive.
Yeah.
But when you have your regular commute to the office, it seems really silly to actually take a car. And so we believe in a robust public transportation, but we also believe that all families should be able to meet their needs, however their needs be met. Carter, I'm going to be bad about answering your EIR question, because I happen to be one of probably many in California who believe that the environmental impact, CEQA, the California Environmental Quality Act, is one of the most misused and abused anti-development programs ever conceived in the history of mankind. It has done probably as much harm to us as Proposition 15 has done. There is nothing about making fair qualitative decisions for development that they're relevant, right? So, we believe that any development needs to study and consider all of its environmental impacts. That's not what CEQA is about. That's not what any is about.
I agree.
And in the case of Treasure Island, to just jump forward, when we were fully approved after some 500 public meetings, including citizens advisory committees and
Yeah.
up to Board of Supervisors meetings, we were promptly sued under CEQA
Yeah.
and 3 years of lawsuits at millions of dollars of costs. Not because we had done anything wrong. We were,
Yeah.
approved at every step of appeal through the state of
Yeah.
California, but because that's what CEQA was for. It's to stop development.
Yeah. And this gets into, kind of the conversation, and I don't want to sidetrack the conversation, but in California, we don't have a housing problem. We have a land problem because we can't develop anything, because of some of these issues. But I digress. So thanks for that, Chris. And I'm on the same page as you are. Well, everyone, that concludes our first episode of my discussion with Chris Meany of Wilson Meany on our discussion of Treasure Island.
You have been listening to the Land to Lots podcast with Carter Froelich. Follow us wherever you find your podcasts to never miss a new episode.